In the late 90s, moving money was slow, frustrating, but in Silicon Valley, a new idea was forming.
By the late 1990s, the internet had fundamentally decoupled information from geography. Data, news, and media moved across the globe in a matter of milliseconds. But while information moved at the speed of light, money remained anchored to the physical world. Paying someone across the country required the same slow, manual processes used for over a century. Consumers had to physically fill out paper checks, mail them, and wait days or weeks for a single transaction to clear. Traditional banks were optimized for this analog reality. They built their security around massive steel vaults and rigid physical infrastructure, making them structurally incapable of keeping pace with a borderless digital web. As e-commerce expanded, the inability to move value digitally became a bottleneck. The stage was set for an unlikely group of outsiders to attempt to decouple currency from its physical limitations. The architecture for this transition emerged in a sweltering Palo Alto office space, defined by heavy CRT monitors and a utilitarian layout. Here, a young programmer named Max Levchin partnered with an investor named Peter Thiel. Backed by a $100,000 bridge loan from Thiel, they began building their first venture. They called the company Confinity. Initially, they weren't building a payment system at all. They were developing security software for handheld devices. Their target hardware was the Palm Pilot, an early personal digital assistant. However, they soon realized the consumer market for mobile security on these primitive, stylus-driven devices was too small to sustain a business. To save the company, they pivoted to a new use case, allowing users to beam money directly between devices using their wireless infrared ports. The technology was notoriously buggy and difficult to demonstrate reliably. But despite the technical friction, it proved that money could be treated as pure transmittable data. The Palm Pilot system had a major practical flaw. It was useless if a user left their device at home. As a temporary solution, Max Levchin built a website feature that allowed users to send money to a standard email address as a backup. The company's data soon showed that this backup feature was vastly more popular than the core Palm Pilot product. Confinity abandoned the hardware business entirely to focus on email-based transactions, officially rebranding the service as PayPal. By following the actual behavior of their users, a failing security startup had accidentally unlocked a frictionless method for global digital payments. While PayPal was refining its email tool, a 27-year-old Elon Musk was launching a rival venture with a far broader scope. Musk had recently received a $22 million payout from his first startup, and he poured the majority of his personal fortune into this new project. He called it X.com. His vision was a digital superbank designed to absorb every traditional financial service, checking, loans, insurance, and stocks, into a single online hub. X.com was heavily capitalized and aggressive, often operating at the edge of banking regulations. This stood in sharp contrast to the single-feature focus of the PayPal team. While Confinity was building a simple payment utility, Musk was attempting to build a platform that could replace the entire global financial system. In a striking coincidence, X.com rented an office suite at 394 University Avenue, the exact same building occupied by the Confinity team. The two rivals were separated by a single plaster wall, with employees from both companies constantly crossing paths in the hallways and parking lot. Despite Musk's broad vision for X.com, his team eventually realized their users were only interested in one minor feature: email payments. Independently, both companies pivoted their entire business models to fight over the exact same customer base. They were competing for the network effect, where the platform with the most users becomes the only viable option. Mathematically, only one of them could survive to dominate the market. Two ambitious teams were now locked in a zero-sum war for the future of money, operating their competing headquarters just inches apart. The sudden popularity of email payments meant these two oblivious neighbors were now selling the exact same service to the exact same demographic. The proximity bred paranoia, kicking off a frantic race to see who could dominate the online payments market first. To capture users before their neighbor could, both companies deployed a viral growth hacking strategy. Confinity's PayPal offered $10 in free cash just to sign up, and another $10 for referring a friend. X.com countered by offering $20 per sign-up. They were literally handing out free money to buy market share. This chart shows the brutal math behind that strategy. While the user acquisition numbers skyrocket exponentially, the cash reserves plummet at a terrifying angle. Between the sign-up bonuses and credit card processing fees, PayPal was bleeding nearly $100,000 every single day. This massive spike in users came directly from the eBay marketplace. Thousands of online sellers abandoned money orders and paper checks, flooding into PayPal and X.com because email payments were instant and required no bank authorization. Whichever company captured the eBay ecosystem would win the entire online payments industry. But the cost of acquiring those specific users was so astronomical that both Confinity and X.com were accelerating rapidly toward total bankruptcy. By early 2000, the cash reserves for both startups were nearing absolute zero. Realizing they were locked in a death spiral, the top executives from Confinity and X.com arranged a highly secretive meeting to find a way out. X.com CEO, Bill Harris, delivered a blunt ultimatum to Elon Musk and the rest of the leadership. He laid out the financials and presented them with a binary choice. They could either merge the two companies immediately, or they could both face financial annihilation. The ensuing negotiations were driven by deep ego and intense suspicion. Musk initially lowballed Confinity, but they eventually hammered out a 50-50 split. The newly merged corporate entity would retain the name X.com, while the actual payment product everyone used would keep the name PayPal. The paperwork was signed and the financial bleeding stabilized, but combining the balance sheets forced two deeply incompatible tribes, with different cultures, visions, and leadership styles, into the exact same corporate cage. The immediate result was technical chaos. They had to merge two entirely different code bases, the underlying collection of source code used to build a software system. Confinity had built PayPal on Linux, an open-source operating system favored by hackers, while X.com was built rigidly on Microsoft Windows. The disorganization quickly took a human toll. The company now had duplicated executive roles and utterly ambiguous reporting lines. The customer service infrastructure buckled under the weight of the combined user base, reaching a point where employees physically unhooked the office phone lines just to stop the ringing. This constant operational friction bred deep resentment. The original Confinity engineers felt sidelined by the incoming corporate structure, while the X.com loyalists viewed the Confinity team as disorganized and stubborn. The merger successfully prevented an external collapse, but it created an internal environment so toxic that the fight for market dominance was entirely replaced by a bitter struggle for executive control. The tension broke in May 2000. In a swift internal coup, the original founders conspired to oust CEO Bill Harris. With Harris removed, Elon Musk took total, unchallenged control of the combined company. Musk immediately issued a controversial executive order. The entire PayPal system had to be rewritten from scratch to run on Microsoft Windows. This mandate effectively halted all new product development for months, infuriating the engineering team. Musk ordered the complete elimination of the PayPal name. He erased every reference to the brand from the website and redirected all traffic to X.com, effectively forcing his original vision onto a team that had spent years building a different identity. The backlash was instantaneous. Peter Thiel, the co-founder of Confinity, resigned in disgust. He refused to watch the brand and the company culture he had built be systematically dismantled. Musk's rigid adherence to his X.com vision alienated the engineers who had actually built the functional payment system. By stripping away their brand and their technical autonomy, he pushed the core talent to a breaking point, making a final rebellion inevitable. In September 2000, an exhausted Elon Musk boarded a commercial flight for his honeymoon. At a time before in-flight Wi-Fi, the moment those cabin doors closed, the CEO was completely disconnected from the outside world. The minute Musk's plane took off, Max Levchin, Peter Thiel, and the original Confinity core team convened a shadowy gathering in the Palo Alto office. They drafted a formal vote of no confidence to present to the company's board of directors. The document carried a lethal stipulation. If Elon Musk was not immediately removed as CEO, the entire core engineering team would resign on the spot. Unwilling to lose the engineers keeping the platform alive, the board swiftly capitulated. When Elon Musk's plane finally landed, he checked his messages to discover the reality. He had been entirely stripped of his power, and his empire belonged to Peter Thiel. The lethal precision required to survive the dot-com bubble eventually turned inward. By the end of 2000, PayPal's leadership had proven that the same tactics used to crush external competitors were just as effective when aimed at their own CEO. By the year 2000, the dot-com bubble had burst. Tech startups were failing by the day, and venture capital funding completely evaporated. PayPal faced two simultaneous threats. They were bleeding $100,000 a day in credit card processing fees, while organized networks of fraudsters used automated bot accounts to steal the company's cash sign-up bonuses. To stop the automated attacks, co-founder Max Levchin built the first commercial CAPTCHA system. A CAPTCHA is a security test that requires users to identify distorted letters and numbers to prove they are human. But stopping the bots didn't solve the massive daily cash burn. The leadership eventually broke their promise to keep the platform free, forcing high-volume users to upgrade to business accounts with transaction fees attached. Users complained, but the revenue followed. As the wider tech market continued its collapse, that steady stream of transaction fees pushed the company into the black. Surviving the crash forced the team to pivot from aggressive, unprofitable growth to strict revenue generation. That shift hardwired a ruthless survival instinct into the company's operations. In early 2002, the financial markets were paralyzed by the aftermath of September 11th. At the same time, state regulators and patent lawsuits were actively trying to block PayPal from entering the stock market. They pushed through the legal roadblocks. On February 15th, they executed an initial public offering, the process of selling corporate shares to the public to raise capital, and ended their first trading day valued at over $1 billion. Yet their position remained highly vulnerable. The vast majority of their transaction volume relied entirely on eBay auctions. They dominated the online marketplace, but a single policy change by eBay could wipe out their entire business. After years of outmaneuvering eBay's native payment systems, the leadership agreed to a buyout. In July 2002, eBay acquired the platform for $1.5 billion in stock. The acquisition secured their financial future, but integrating a scrappy startup into a massive e-commerce corporation immediately triggered intense internal friction. Inside eBay, the original team hit a wall of corporate bureaucracy. The fast-paced, engineering-first environment was abruptly replaced by rigid meetings and strict hierarchical protocols. The leadership walked away. CEO Peter Thiel, co-founder Elon Musk, and Max Levchin all left the parent company within months of the acquisition finalizing. Armed with millions from the buyout, these former colleagues funded each other's next ventures. They built YouTube, launched LinkedIn, and created Yelp. Elon Musk directed his payout into entirely new industries, founding the aerospace manufacturer SpaceX and taking control of the electric vehicle company Tesla. The press labeled them the PayPal Mafia. Their collective success proved that the company's real export was a highly aggressive methodology for building internet businesses. Back inside eBay, the payment platform continued to scale. By the early 2010s, it was processing more transaction volume and capturing more global users than eBay's core retail business. In 2015, eBay finally spun the unit out. PayPal returned to the public markets as a standalone entity, trading under its own ticker symbol on the Nasdaq exchange. Free to operate without eBay's restrictions, they went on a buying spree. They acquired the peer-to-peer transfer app Venmo, the payment processor Braintree, and the digital shopping tool Honey. That network of financial tools captured a massive slice of global e-commerce. Within a few years, the former subsidiary was worth triple the valuation of eBay itself. Securing independence from eBay cleared the path for PayPal to build a global commerce platform, laying the foundation for its current market dominance. This chart shows PayPal's annual total payment volume over the last decade, the total dollar value of all transactions completed on the platform. It shows a steep climb, peaking at $1.79 trillion processed across 400 million active accounts in a single year. But managing that volume requires strict algorithmic security. Automated systems regularly freeze accounts for up to 180 days to investigate suspicious activity, frequently leaving legitimate users cut off from their own funds, with limited access to human support. In 2022, an updated policy document included a clause stating users could be fined $2,500 for promoting misinformation. The company quickly retracted the update, calling it an error, but the backlash permanently dented consumer trust. At the same time, the checkout landscape fractured. Rivals like Stripe optimized the back end for merchants, while Apple Pay allowed consumers to skip logging into third-party wallets entirely. The biggest risk to their market share is the natural bureaucratic slowdown that happens when an agile startup matures into a massive financial institution. In early 2026, the board of directors removed the sitting CEO. They brought in Enrique Lores to accelerate the company's product roadmap. The new strategy hinges on agentic commerce. Agentic commerce is a model where artificial intelligence acts as a personal shopper, discovering products and executing the checkout process autonomously on behalf of the user. They are partnering with AI developers to embed their payment systems directly into these automated workflows. If AI handles the buying, the company providing the financial plumbing keeps the transaction fees. 25 years after surviving the dot-com crash, PayPal must prove it can still innovate at the speed of the startups trying to replace it. Once hailed as the pioneer of digital finance, PayPal has undergone a stark shift in public perception. The platform that helped launch the modern internet economy is now frequently viewed as a hostile, bureaucratic antagonist. The primary source of this friction is the 180-day hold. Without warning or a clear path for appeal, PayPal's automated risk systems regularly freeze merchant balances for up to 6 months. For small businesses operating on thin margins, losing access to their working capital overnight can be an immediate death sentence. These user horror stories are reflected in the data. On Trustpilot, PayPal currently maintains a 1.3-star average rating, with the majority of recent reviews citing non-existent support and seized funds. This reputational damage eventually invited federal scrutiny. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, the U.S. agency responsible for consumer protection in the financial sector, pursued enforcement actions over deceptive practices. Their investigations detailed instances of PayPal signing users up for credit products without valid consent and obscuring hidden fees. Public trust reached a breaking point in 2022. During a routine update to its legal agreements, the company buried a punitive new clause in the fine print that sparked a massive user revolt. The policy threatened to fine users $2,500 directly from their account balances if the company determined they were spreading misinformation. The backlash was so intense that PayPal was forced to retract the policy, claiming the language was inserted by mistake, but the incident caused a permanent fracture in brand loyalty. With competitors like Apple Pay and Stripe gaining ground, these self-inflicted wounds have led the market to question if the oldest financial engine on the internet is finally losing its grip. However, looking past the individual user experience reveals a macro scale of operations that most consumers never see. PayPal operates a vast global infrastructure that remains the bedrock of online trade. The company ended 2025 with 439 million active accounts, generating over $33 billion in annual revenue. This heat map tracks their total payment volume. In a single year, PayPal processed $1.79 trillion across 200 different markets. This persistence isn't driven by the main app alone. Since 2013, the organization has operated as a multi-layered parent company, methodically absorbing a portfolio of specialized tech assets. Their ecosystem is designed for total market coverage. Venmo handles U.S. peer-to-peer transfers, Braintree powers enterprise payment backends, Zoom manages international remittances, and Honey tracks e-commerce discounts. Together, these brands form a foundational layer of financial infrastructure. PayPal isn't just a digital wallet, it is a system woven into the very mechanics of how money moves globally. Wall Street remains skeptical of this scale. Because PayPal is no longer seen as a high-growth startup, its stock price has been heavily penalized by the financial establishment, forcing the board to take drastic action. In early 2026, the board ousted CEO Alex Chriss in favor of Enrique Lores. The message was clear: the company needed to transition from defending its old territory to executing an aggressive new strategy. The first move in this pivot is institutionalizing crypto through their proprietary stablecoin PayPal USD, or PYUSD. A stablecoin is a digital asset designed to maintain a fixed $1 value, avoiding the wild price swings common in other cryptocurrencies. Unlike speculative tokens, PYUSD is fully backed by U.S. Treasuries and cash equivalents. This allows capital to move instantly across high-speed networks like Solana and Arbitrum, bypassing the delays and fees of the traditional banking system. The second, more ambitious pillar of the transition is agentic commerce. PayPal has entered into deep infrastructure partnerships with AI leaders like OpenAI and Google to automate the transaction process. In this model, autonomous AI agents will find products, compare prices, and execute the payment through PayPal's rails, potentially removing the need for a human to ever interact with a checkout page. This pivot moves PayPal away from the manual checkout button and toward the invisible infrastructure required for autonomous, machine-led transactions. This aggressive pivot is a return to the company's original DNA. The early team, known as the PayPal Mafia, was defined by a ruthless, move fast and break things culture that reshaped Silicon Valley. That calculated ambition was led by figures like Peter Thiel, who used PayPal as a training ground for a new generation of tech leadership. After leaving the company, this network went on to found or lead YouTube, LinkedIn, Tesla, and SpaceX, effectively building the infrastructure of the modern web.
But today, that scrappy startup is an aging $64 billion behemoth. It is facing an existential test to see if it can still operate with the same lethal speed that defined its founders. Their massive capital reserves and new AI tools represent a final attempt to reclaim their role as the primary engine of digital trade, rather than fading into an obsolete ghost in the machine.